Hello and welcome to the Chiltern Teaching School Alliance presentation and PowerPoint. Today's session is January 2020 and it's all about applying for a job. My name is Adrian Rogers and I'm proud to be CEO of Chiltern Learning Trust. Chiltern Learning Trust, Chiltern Teaching School Alliance and Chiltern Training Group all work hand in hand as one organisation. For those of you that are watching this live, then please feel free to go into the Zoom box, go into the text box and ask things as we're going through. And similarly, we'll have 15 minutes at the end for a live Q&A. For those of you that are watching this as a pre-record or on YouTube, then please enjoy it and contact us if you have any questions whatsoever. My background, just to give you some idea and to bore you with some details, I've been a CEO of the Trust. We have 11 schools, 8,500 pupils, and I've been proud to do that for 5.5 years. Prior to that, for 13 years, I was a head teacher and executive head, also working across local authorities, and that was for 13 years, and it was in an outstanding school, and we had 1,000 pupils there. Prior to that, I'm secondary trained and was many moons ago a PE teacher. So that's my background. The reason I tell you that also is obviously I've perhaps done 500 interviews for teachers over the years. Now I'm only involved, if I'm honest, with head teacher and deputy head teacher interviews. So therefore, anyone watching this, I don't expect to be interviewing you for perhaps at least 3 or 4 years. So hopefully this is just impartial advice and can tell you what head teachers are really looking for or what senior staff are really looking for in looking for a good candidate. But throughout this session, it's important that it's 2 ways that you reflect on the right choice of school and the right choice of career for you. And hopefully, again, with all my background and experience, I can give you that advice. So the first section that we're going to look at in terms of your job and getting you the dream job that you've trained for is to look at the type of school that you wish to apply to. I think it's really important that you give this a great deal of consideration, much more than I think a lot of trainees actually do. So therefore, I'm going to take you through some of the options and perhaps some of the stereotypical pros and cons, but you'll go into a school and you'll know if you feel comfortable. And I think that's really important. I will try and actually adapt this presentation compared to previous years and talk about online and how you can make those types of decisions when you perhaps may not even be allowed to visit the school. So I will talk about some of those things. But of course, as with anything in life, it's about relationships. So therefore, when you're making that decision, it's about the relationship that you may have with the head of department or the head teacher or your senior leader in that school. There are different types of schools, of course. Some of you listening to this are trained to be primary staff, some are going into special schools, some are going into secondary. And regardless of that, there are still different types, brands and flavours within that. For example, I'm talking for Bedfordshire, there are actually upper and secondary systems that exist. So some of our schools are 11 to 16, a couple of our schools are 13 to 18. So there are different types even within secondary. And middle schools were much more common perhaps 5 to 10 years ago, but there are still 100 middle schools and approximately 25 of those are in Bedfordshire. So there are different types and flavours of school, but also there are different stages of that school's development. Regardless of what it says on the tin in terms of Ofsted, schools will be in a different place developmentally, and how they support you and how they expect you to fit in will change according to that too. So my advice to you is to think very carefully about the type of school. So some of you may be training for primary and actually prefer middle because you prefer the upper end of Key Stage 2 and perhaps just dipping into the lower end of Key Stage 3, and that's absolutely fine. Similarly, there may be secondary people who would prefer to do sixth form work or prefer to do lower Key Stage 3, and again, it's up to you to have a look at those schools and those jobs. One quick bit of advice really is look at where the school is in its development. If a school is has gone into special measures recently and is experiencing pupil recruitment difficulty and staff recruitment difficulty, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong place for you. Some of you may like rolling your sleeves up and having that challenge, and that's brilliant. Some of you may like that and have that resilience within you and that burning desire to change things. Some of you may actually go into an outstanding school, whether it be primary or secondary, and find it highly structured. I know it's a bland, stereotypical statement, but I do find that outstanding schools often are highly structured. And it may be actually you don't fit into that ethos. And again, that's fine, into what school is correct for you. And some schools, of course, will have the capacity to support you more than others. You may go into some schools and you'll find a head teacher that's burning with passion and desire to make their school the best school in the county. And that may be something you buy into. Others, head teachers, you may go in and you think, well, actually, I like their calm, laid-back approach. And that ethos permeates across the school. So please think about the type of school that you wish to go into. Think about the age range that you wish to go into. Also, some of you may even be thinking about looking at private schools, and that's absolutely fine and up to you. It may be that that's your background. So please have a look at the types of school, read up about them, visit them online. Also, and I suppose adapting it to a 2021 presentation, really get on a Zoom call with the head of the department if you're going into secondary, or with your key stage leader in primary. Get to meet the people that you will have daily contact with, not just the head teachers. Head teachers are often brilliant at being car salespeople, and they will sell you this vision of their brilliant school. But actually, especially if you're in a large secondary, you may see that head teacher 2 or 3 times a week to say hello to in the corridor. It's the head of the department or the key stage leader or the year leader in primary that you'll see day in, day out, who will give you that guidance and support. So it may be worth getting a Zoom call with those as well as with a head teacher or senior teacher. And please bear that in mind. And don't be afraid to ask for that if that's what you wish to do. Okay, I'm now going to turn a little bit to geography, and this may seem common sense to some of you, and I apologise, but do think very carefully about how far you're prepared to travel and at what time you're prepared to travel. I live in between Bedford and Luton. I deliberately go into work a little bit earlier than I did as a head teacher. My school was 10 minutes down the road as a head teacher. My school that I'm based at in Denby in Luton is a 20-minute drive if I leave at 7:30 or 7:15. If I leave at 8, it's a 1-hour drive. So work out exactly a time that you feel comfortable in going to school. It may be that you go in early and come home early, but find out that and do your journey and do your drive. I promise you, even head teachers will turn up for interview and say, actually the drive was too far. Well, they could have done that before they'd saved themselves 20 hours of doing the application form. So please work out how far you're prepared to travel. Even draw a circle around from where you live. And if you're prepared to relocate, be open and honest with that. I will also be really honest and pragmatic in this. If you're applying for a PE teacher job, that circle's going to be damn big, because they're going to be rare, those jobs. If you're applying for a maths and science teacher post, you'll get one within the 5 to 10 miles of your home if that school is suitable for you. So please be very aware of the circumstances. And of course, some primary and some secondary jobs are much more scarce and much more difficult to recruit to than others. So therefore, it is worth knowing your market. And it is worth also waiting for that right school and that right job. Okay, so now we've talked about common sense things in terms of that journey, but please take note of that. We're now going to go and look at our next slide and look at some of the more practical tips. Okay, so we first come on to the application form and our letter. We use my new term, and a lot of trusts and schools, especially local to Bedfordshire, now use that. The letter is often contained then, therefore, within the application form, and it's usually 1 to 3 sides. Stick to that. I promise you, much as you think that the head teacher wants to read 7 or 8 sides from you, they do not. They do not have time. If you send them 5 sides in, they will read the first and last paragraph. So please stick to the limit. Okay, your philosophy of education. It's important that they understand what motivates you, what makes you tick, and why you want to teach, and why you want to change the world and improve things for children. And that's great. The more and more you can put that into your own terms, the better. What heads strongly dislike is receiving lots and lots of philosophies of education that are cut and paste from their last university lecture. So therefore, they want it to be personal to you. What motivates you to want to teach and want to be in that school? So the more personal, the better. And also, if I'm honest, 4 or 5 key points are absolutely fine. Talk about why you want to teach, talk about the strength of relationships, talk about the knowledge and skills and experience you wish to impart and how it's improved your life chances. Okay. And then a small sentence or 2 about how children learn best when they're safe and secure, and that you're secure in your subject knowledge. Okay, so keep it fairly brief. Perhaps a paragraph of 6 or 7 lines would suffice. Also, then, please make sure that you use the name of the school often and that you've researched the school. When I coach head teachers in terms of applying for headships, or deputy heads applying for headships, I say to them, use the name of the school 10 times in your letter. And that's really simplistic and crass, but actually it's really true. If you're applying for school X and you've just had a rejection letter from school Y and you use school Y's name, your application goes straight in the bin. Okay, so please make sure that you use the school's name, but make it unique to that school. If that school has, for example, a knowledge-rich curriculum, and is very proud of that and flags it up on their website, make sure you use that, and that you've done your research on that. If they have anything that's unique to them, make sure that you point that out, that you're comfortable with that, and that you enjoy that approach. Similarly, I think it's really good to understand that heads are flattered. You putting a compliment about the school, heads actually like that. They're quite easily pleased because their school is like their own child. So therefore, a compliment and flattery actually does get you into the door often. So make sure that you look at what is good about that school and why you'd like to work there, and let that head teacher know. I think also the last point that I often look for is what makes your application unique. So do you have skills and strengths that you can offer to that school, not just enrichment, but within your department or within your year group that actually you want to bring along? Whether it be knowledge of the local area because you've lived next door to the school all your life and you know the local geographical area, whether it be that you're national scuba diving champion, whether it be that you're a ballet dancer, but they want to see you as a whole person and what you can offer into that school. So therefore, they don't want to, and what I'm often looking for, and I think most heads look for, is actually they're looking for a human being. They're not looking for someone who is going to come in and 9 to 5 teach. They want to know what you're going to bring to the school and that you're good company for their children. Okay, so I think that's really, really key when you look at your letter and look at your application. Again, it's not an advert, but my new term is an excellent form, and it does enable you to keep all of your details on there, but it does also mean that you have to be really, really careful and try to make it unique to the school that you are applying to. Right, the next part that I'm going to very quickly talk about is doing your research. So I'm going to ask you, especially again 2021, when you can't go in and have a look around the school, it is really important that your research is carried out. And I think it's important to not try and frighten anyone off, but it is important to know that the research works 2 ways. So I'll talk about how you research the school. We've mentioned about asking politely for a meeting with a head of year or a head of key stage or a head of department, and that's good advice. But also go on all the social media, get onto their Twitter. Most schools will have a Twitter account, most schools will have a Facebook account, most schools will have an active website. If they don't have an active website, they don't have a Facebook, and they don't have a Twitter account, what does that say about that school? So actually, by looking at if they don't have that as an expectation nowadays, then I'm afraid that's probably not very helpful to you, and probably showing that they're not particularly progressive, particularly in 2021. So therefore, my advice to you is to look onto all of those things. Get onto Twitter and follow them. Get onto Facebook and follow them. Look at their last 3 months' posts for both platforms. Look at their website. Make sure that it's up to date. And if it's not giving you the information that you want, then have those questions ready before you meet with the head department or the head teacher online. Again, perhaps because of my PE background, I don't know, but I think relationships are really important. I'd be wanting to speak to people on a video conference rather than a telephone call nowadays, and definitely much rather than an email. So do your research and then make it personal, and then going into the relationships. The flip side of that is also making sure that your own social media and your accounts and your online profile is clean, neat, tidy, professional. And I think actually I've had to warn people about this a lot less. I've been doing this similar lecture for perhaps about 10 years now, or talk for about 10 years. And 10 years ago, you had to be really strict with graduates and talk to them about their profiles. I think people are a lot more savvy nowadays. They've got their profiles hidden and guarded. But please be very aware that an employer will still look on your online profile. I'll be really honest with you, and I apologise if this comes across as creepy. I will look up any deputy head or assistant head or head teacher that we shortlist in the trust. I will ask my marketing person, or I will do it myself, will profile them and look at all their history. We want to know what type of person we're employing, what investment we're making, and especially if you're local, what reputational damage or enhancement is that going to provide to our school. So therefore, be very clear in having your profile professional now. I don't wish to speak ill of anyone that's listening, but we've all been students, we've all had a slightly different lifestyle to the one that we're about to go into as a professional. And please, I think you're very naive if you don't expect a 14-year-old to do exactly the same as your head teacher does when you start teaching them. They will look you up online. Okay, so therefore make sure it is a professional profile immediately. One last little bit about research is Ofsted reports. Denby, where I'm based, is a truly outstanding school. It has not been inspected since 2007. So therefore, make sure that you're fully aware that Ofsted reports can be quickly out of date. They may still be accurate. Denby's I think is very accurate from 13 years ago, but it's still a very different type of school. So there is a little health warning with Ofsted inspections. So therefore, have a look at the date on them as well as the content of them. Okay, next slide. I'll be very careful in how I term some of these things, but your dress is very, very, very important. You probably can tell that I'm sitting in my house delivering this talk. I'm talking to you people. I've chosen to wear a shirt and tie. Okay? I'm not saying that you perhaps should wear a shirt and tie if you're having a Zoom meeting, but you definitely shouldn't be in your string vest. You should be dressed professionally and appropriately, even if you're going to an online meeting, in my opinion. You take a risk of someone having a dim view of you because of how you dress. And that's perhaps not fair on you, but I think you're better being prepared. Perhaps I would think it excessive if someone was having an informal discussion from the part of a suit to talk to me on a Zoom meeting if I was ahead, but I would expect them to be, neat and tidy. Similarly, for when you go for interview, and I suppose the slide is more about when you go for your interview, it is really important that you dress appropriately. I'm going to talk through one or two taboos and hopefully put them in sensitive terms for you as well. So often I'm asked, and particularly, we our schools are in Luton and Bedfordshire. They're multicultural schools. We have we're very, very, very proud that we have many BAME teachers and teachers from different cultures, different backgrounds. And the most common question I get is, what about if they don't like my headwear or don't like what I'm wearing? And my honest answer to that is, if they're not comfortable with what you deem as appropriate wear because of your religion and your culture, then it is not the school for you. I think actually we've moved a long way from that, and I think most schools are really accepting and welcoming of that different styles of dresses and different cultures, and that's brilliant. If the school is not accepting of that and questions you on it, not the school for you. And I'm sorry if that comes across as blunt, but that's my honest opinion. But I do think 99% of schools have moved a long way. Perhaps if I'm just showing my age or perhaps an old-fashioned opinion, I apologise for this, but don't forget that you are not talking to a 25-year-old head teacher, or very unlikely to be. They're more likely to be my generation than some of our graduates that are listening to this, although of course we're delighted to have lots of more mature graduates as well in our courses. Please, when you go in to your interview or you visit the school, dress as though you are on interview, even if you're just visiting. But when you do go for your interview, make sure it is age appropriate. A head teacher is not interested in you having a fashionable slim tie of 74 different colours. Make it traditional. If those of you that are watching this are lucky enough to look very young, don't forget that if you're going into a secondary school, you're going to be teaching 18-year-olds potentially. If you're 21 or 22, the head teacher doesn't want you looking 17 or 18, they want you to look mature and professional. Actually, and I apologise if this appears as sexist, I think it's much easier for men. You just put on a plain suit and you're fine. And a plain shirt and a plain tie, and actually you will be smart. I think actually, I apologise, but I think men have got it very easy for interviews. Females go in as though you are going in professionally. Please, first impressions count, and that comes from what you wear. So be smart, but you're not going out to a nightclub. Okay, so make sure that you appear professional. Okay, so this next slide is really, really helpful. We will share these slides with you, but when you go into the school, or if you teach online, you'll be given a task to teach to, or a learning objective, and you'll need to do some planning behind that. What we often get especially with people who are keen to impress and people who apply for NQT posts or even promoted posts, they often want lots of information about the group that they're teaching, and they will bombard you with emails. Send one calm single email, and here I've put most of the information that you will need. If the school says they won't give you some of the information because of GDPR, please accept that. Okay? There's no point trying to take on the school about their GDPR policy. Okay, but here what we've got for you is a list of things that you may wish to request in a polite email, so that it shows that you're prepared and ready for your lesson. Some of it may be covered in the email that you get if you're invited and fortunate enough to be invited for interview. Okay, and again it may be online, and in which case some of those procedures still hold. Okay, so I won't say any more about that, but please, I encourage you to use this as a bit of a template so that you get the information that you want. Okay, if we then move on to the next slide, which is looking at the tour of the school and looking around, please make sure that you take an interest in what is going on around you. Okay, and the next two slides talk about that, and they talk about how actually talk to the children, show that you are interested. But also, when you're doing that, make sure that you talk appropriately to the adults. Okay, so the first of these two slides talks about how you're going to be making an impression when you walk in. I'm going to be really honest with you. I always, when I was a head teacher, a few years ago now, but I would always say to the receptionist, which one is going to get the job? And I promise you, 80% of the time, she was right. And all she did was sign them in and ask them to take a seat and offer them a coffee or tea. So that first impression is really important. Make the right first impression. And you are in a competitive situation if you go for an interview, but please try not to enter into that competitive situation. Just be yourself. Okay? You will find some people will be alpha male and alpha female and try and put people off. Please don't do that, but also don't just quiver in the corner. Make sure that you put yourself across well and professionally, including with the other candidates and including with everyone that you come into contact with. And then on the next slide, when you look around the school, if you're fortunate enough to do that, and if you're fortunate to see any lessons at all, in 2021 you may see key worker lessons, then please make sure that we social distance, but talk to the children. Talk to the people that you meet. Actually, it's really good ammunition for later on in your interview. Okay, so we now move to the interview itself. And often this is the bit that frightens candidates or makes them very nervous. It's important that those nerves don't come across. So what exactly is the head teacher looking for in an interview? Without psychoanalysing it too much, really they want to see that you are comfortable talking to people and that you would therefore be comfortable in having children in your charge and that you would be caring for them and you'd be knowledgeable and that you'd be a good teacher. So they want to be put at ease by you. So the more you come across as nervous, ironically, is the more difficult they can imagine you in front of that class. What I want to see, and I think what most heads actually want to see, they want to see someone relaxed. They want to see someone who's considered about their answers. But they want to see someone who's smiling, who's actually comfortable in relationships. Your job that you are applying for, it's a wonderful profession that I'd never change, my career choice ever. But that is involving you talking to 30 different children each hour. Or if you're in a primary, that was 30 children for 5 hours a day. And so relationships are key. Make sure that you put your interview panel at ease. Talk to them about the school and the things that you've discovered. Have good non-verbal communication. Don't be closed. Don't look out the window. Make sure that you address the question and answer it. Okay, so that's the interview. Now the next slide, if we move on, is actually a series of questions for you. And when I do this session live, which has been every other time except for this one, I then give us a break and we have a coffee and we chat to the person next to us and we go through these and it's a bit more interactive. I'm actually obviously going to try and get through the session a little quicker today rather than you sitting and listening to a screen for hours. But these questions are important that you take away. Do not go and learn the answers to 30 or 40 different questions. What I've tried to do is pick out the key different types of questions that you'll be asked. You will be asked about being a tutor and a class teacher. You will be asked about safeguarding. You will be asked about what other wider things that you can contribute. You will be asked about what makes good assessment or makes a great lesson. So there's different ways of asking those questions, but actually there's a bunch of 8 to 10 questions of a certain type, and heads can only mess and tweak those different categories. So therefore, if you've got these questions ready and prepared and can be flexible with those, then you've probably got your thinking done. Okay, so again, you'll get these slides, have a look at the interview questions a night or two before the interview, perhaps even do a mock interview with your mentor or with your partner, either online or at home, but please have a quick practice. However self-conscious you may feel, you can always tell when it's someone's very first interview. So therefore, if you've had a couple of mock interviews, that will really help you, especially if it's the dream job that you've got an interview for. Right, on the next slide, very quickly, you'll sometimes be given a pupil interview. Now perhaps in 2021 and in lockdown may not happen, but these are, I really like them. But please, just 2 or 3 quick points. If you are involved, pupils are involved, treat them as pupils. They're not there as your best mate. They're not there for you to talk down to. Treat them as you would your class, okay? And I promise you, if you try and be pally-pally to a pupil panel, they will quickly say, he's just trying to be our mate and make themselves popular. Children see through it all. So have a professional relationship, be warm, be kind. Also, a good tactic is actually is to flip it, and children like to give their opinion. So if you've got a pupil panel, at the end, turn around to them and say, if you were head teacher at this school, what would you do? Where am I going to see the best practice in this school? What are the best things that make you proud? What are the things that make you proud of coming to this school? Actually, they love giving that feedback because they know that you're then interested in them. So if you do have a pupil panel, please make it two-way by asking questions at the end and valuing their opinion. Okay, so we're not actually going through a task now, although it says task on the slide. I had hoped a couple of weeks ago actually that some of you would be live listening to this. So what we're going to do is just talk to you a tiny bit about safeguarding. Those of you that are on CTG course that are watching this live, then by all means, please have breakout groups and have sessions afterwards, and you may want to think about this and talk about this with colleagues. But I would really make sure safeguarding questions are not difficult, but often they're answered very badly. And there are 2 or 3 key things that you can talk about in safeguarding. We're not going to go into the details of those, but it's very easy to do a good safeguarding answer. So make sure that you are prepared and ready for that. You will be asked on that. But then again, as we discussed in the last slide, you will be asked on things like assessment and what makes good learning and a good lesson. So please be ready for the safeguarding question. Please even talk to your mentor about it if you want a decent answer about using the school systems, about what you must say when you're approached by a child, etc., and how it's everyone's responsibility. Okay. Now, if we look on the last slide, we've almost got to the end of the presentation. This is really, really important, and I think it's important to perhaps explain the background to this. But often, you don't employ the best person on the day. Heads might make a mistake. Even however good they might be, and these processes are rigorous often, that sometimes the second best person was actually the best person. And there are lots of examples that I've had of this in my career, where I've appointed a reasonable person actually, but the person that came second, we've had a discussion afterwards, and we've found them another role, or they've gone to another school within our trust, and they've been an absolutely super appointment. And I think it's really, really important that at the end of an interview that you do 2 or 3 things. One is, if they tell you on the day, as you're in the building or online, that you haven't got it, please accept that with good grace. Even if you want to chunter and kick the cat when you get home, that's fine, but you accept it with good grace in front of that head teacher. Okay? Head teachers talk to each other. It's almost like a secret society. But if you think that if you say to them, well, I don't agree with your decision, and are petulant, I promise you that if you apply for another job, the head teacher, and it's within the same town or within the same county often, that other person will know, that the head teacher will know each other. Okay? So please be very aware of that. And I often say this, as a head, I used to say this to candidates, please do your very best. It's not a competitive situation. If someone comes second, actually, there may be a role for them within that school, or there may be a role for them within that trust. I promise you the advice I give to my head teachers, if you've got some really good candidates and you think they're really appointable, please don't send them away empty-handed. Please pass their details on to any other head teacher that we know locally, whether that be in the trust or out of the trust. So actually we keep good people, and we keep them in the profession, or we keep them in our trust, or we keep them in our town. And that's really important to know that collegiality exists behind closed doors. So please, even if you don't get a job and you go for it and it's your dream job, try not to be disappointed. I'm going to let you into a tiny trade secret. We have 11 schools and we've got some super head teachers in our trust, and 7 of them are outstanding. Some of those head teachers actually came second for other school headships in our trust and then got them in our second attempt, and I'm proud of that. That's not a sign of weakness. You won't know their heads' names and who they are, but they're doing a brilliant job leading a school. But actually they came second to a school in our trust 6 months before, but then the next time we met after and we gave feedback, and I thought, actually, this person has got a passion to improve the life chances of people. This person can lead. Okay, they may not have been the best person on the day for that school, but it doesn't mean to say they're not a great leader. And that exact same rationale applies to you. You know, you may find someone that suits that school better and fits in better on that day, and that's fine. That happens to all of us. But actually, if you get feedback and listen and act on it, often you'll find that the head teacher, you know, my first instinct, if I had someone who'd come a close second and listened to the feedback well, reflected on it and got back to me, actually I found that I thought they were really suitable for a post within my school, or I'd phone the head teacher up from the next school and tell them I've got a diamond that I didn't appoint. So those things happen. So please get feedback, take it on the chin. Even if you think you did awfully, it's still worth it. If you really don't want to go through the pain, ask for 5 or 6 bullet points on email. But my honest advice is, if you are unsuccessful, is to get feedback from the head teacher or the person that led the interview. Right, finally, and I back to the start, I said, what do I look for? And I look for people with personality. I look for people who will give selflessly to the children. I look for people with a sense of humour. I want people working in our organisation that have an ambition and a drive to make things better for the children. I want to employ people that will listen to advice, but I want to appoint people who've got an opinion. And most head teachers want that relationship to be great. I don't know, some people perhaps disagree with it, but it's a little bit of a cliche. But teaching is 75% relationships, 25% knowledge imparting. And I honestly believe that. If you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't have those relationships with the children, then that's very much diluted or lost. So please, good luck with your applications. Please talk to your mentors, talk to your people that you respect, your friends and colleagues, about if that school is right for you, particularly in the days of lockdown. Good luck with it all. For those of you that are listening that are CTG, please, if you have any questions, email them in to Becky and Claire and I'll get back to you. But more importantly, if you're live on screen now, please, I'm going to pass over and we'll to one of our course leads and they'll take some questions from you. Okay, good luck with your applications. Hope it goes well.